The silence of Stonewall Prison shattered into chaos. Officer Selena Vega sensed something far darker than a simple food dispute. She saw secrets burning in the inmates' eyes. In the mess hall, a small argument erupted into a storm of violence. Trays turned into weapons, tables became barricades, and the radios fell silent. Trapped and outnumbered, Selena realized this riot was no accident. It was a smokescreen for something far more dangerous, an escape plan woven in shadows, led by the deadliest men inside. If this moment felt intense, prepare yourself, because what comes next is darker, more dangerous, and far more powerful than anything you've seen so far. The air inside Stonewall Prison carried a strange heaviness that morning, one Selena Vega could not shake. She had walked these halls hundreds of times, her boots echoing against the concrete floors, her hand resting against the cold steel of her baton. Yet something about today felt different. The prisoners weren't shouting, laughing, or jeering the way they usually did. Instead, they whispered. Their eyes darted to the corners, their bodies shifted uneasily, and their conversations died the moment she approached. Selena's instincts had been sharpened, not only by years of working as a corrections officer, but by a past she rarely spoke, of nights in underground fight rings, battles fought in blood and sweat, and a youth spent surviving on unforgiving streets. That past whispered to her now, warning her that silence in a place like Stonewall was never a good sign. As she walked into the mess hall, the tension only grew stronger. The inmates sat hunched over their trays, some pushing their food around without eating, others glancing toward the guards and then quickly away. Selena scanned the room, her eyes falling on Rico Sanchez, a notorious gang leader whose calm demeanor seemed too deliberate. Across the room, Marcus Reaper Cole smirked at her, a look that sent a chill down her spine. Then it happened. The first tray hit the floor with a crash, loud enough to make every head snap up. An inmate shouted about rotten food, his voice sharp and rehearsed. Another followed, flipping his table with a force that scattered trays and cups across the floor. Within seconds, the mess hall descended into chaos. Men shouted, fists flew, and metal trays became weapons. The roar of violence rose so fast it felt like an explosion. "Control, this is Vega! Riot in the mess hall!" Selena barked into her radio, but the only response was static. She tried again, her voice cutting through the noise, but the line was dead. Either the system was jammed or someone had deliberately cut communications. A chair came flying toward her, and she ducked just in time. Rising quickly, she slammed her baton across the arm of a charging inmate, sending him sprawling to the floor. Another came at her, and she pivoted, driving her elbow into his ribs. Her training kept her alive, but the sheer number of inmates closing in was overwhelming. Selena's eyes flicked toward the far exit where she caught sight of Harker, the most dangerous man in Stonewall, slipping quietly out of the chaos, his loyal men close behind. They weren't part of the fight. No, they were using it. Realization struck her hard. This riot wasn't about food, anger, or injustice. It was a cover, a distraction. Her heart pounded as she fought to stay on her feet. Around her, guards were being overwhelmed, dragged down by mobs of desperate men. Selena knew she couldn't just fight for survival. She had to uncover the truth behind the chaos before it was too late. And deep down, she knew one thing with absolute certainty. The real danger of this riot had only just begun. The mess hall had transformed into a war zone. Selena Vega braced herself as another inmate lunged toward her with a broken tray edge sharpened into a jagged blade. She sidestepped, twisted his arm, and sent him crashing face first into the overturned table. For a heartbeat, she allowed herself to breathe. But then the wave came again. Too many, always too many. Blood stained the concrete. The metallic tang filled her nose as the roar of the inmates shook the walls. The few guards still standing were retreating toward the doors, their faces pale with panic. Selena's radio was useless, her calls lost in static, but her gut told her the silence from control wasn't an accident. Someone wanted her cut off. Her eyes locked again on the far exit. Harker and his crew had vanished, slipping into the shadows like predators. Rico Sanchez remained in the hall, shouting orders to his men not to waste their strength in pointless brawls. He was observing, calculating, as though the chaos was a chessboard and every inmate a piece waiting to be sacrificed. Selena ducked behind an overturned table, her breath coming fast. She needed to think, not just fight. The riot was growing by the second, and if it spread beyond the mess hall, the entire prison could fall under inmate control. She'd seen prison fights before, but this was different. This had a purpose. A sudden scream cut through the noise. She turned to see a young guard, barely out of training, being dragged down by 3 inmates. Selena surged forward, swinging her baton like a blade, striking one man across the temple and another in the gut. The third released the guard and backed away, glaring at her with hate burning in his eyes. "Get out of here!" she shouted at the rookie, shoving him toward the exit. He stumbled, terrified, but obeyed. Selena knew he wouldn't make it far. None of them would, unless she found out what this riot was hiding. Then the lights flickered. For a moment, the mess hall plunged into darkness. The sudden blackness froze everyone in place, the only sound the ragged breathing of hundreds of men. When the lights snapped back on, Selena felt her blood run cold. Half the room was gone. In the cover of darkness, dozens of inmates had slipped away, following Harker's trail. The chaos had been nothing but a diversion, and it was working perfectly. Selena's chest tightened with anger. She couldn't let this happen. She shoved another inmate aside and forced her way toward the exit, every step a battle. Her muscles screamed, but her will drove her forward. She needed answers, and she needed them fast. As she pushed through, she caught sight of Marcus Reaper Cole standing in the doorway. He wasn't fighting, he was watching. His eyes met hers, and for a second something unsettling flickered there. A smirk, a secret. Selena's gut twisted. Reaper wasn't just another inmate caught in the storm. He was part of it, and in that instant she knew. The riot was no longer just a prison emergency. It was a conspiracy. The corridors of Stonewall echoed with chaos. Alarms finally blared, but they came too late, their shrill cries swallowed by the roar of the riot spreading like wildfire. Selena Vega shoved past another wave of inmates, her baton slick with sweat and blood, her breath ragged. Every inch of her body screamed for rest, but she couldn't stop. Not while Harker's men were moving unseen in the shadows. She reached the junction near Block C, the path dimly lit by flickering bulbs. The air was thick with the stench of smoke and sweat, punctuated by the distant shouts of guards losing ground. Selena's instincts told her she was walking straight into the heart of the conspiracy, but hesitation had never been in her nature. She pressed forward. A figure stepped out of the smoke. Marcus Reaper Cole. His smirk was the same one she'd seen in the mess hall. A predator's smile, calm in the middle of chaos. Selena tightened her grip on her baton. "Out of my way, Cole," she growled, but he didn't move. Instead, he chuckled, shaking his head slowly. "You don't get it, do you, Officer Vega? This is bigger than you. Bigger than all of us." Before she could react, 2 inmates surged from the shadows, grabbing her arms. Selena fought back instantly, twisting, striking, but the numbers overwhelmed her. A fist slammed into her ribs, stealing her breath, and a blow to her shoulder sent her baton clattering to the floor. She tried to kick free, but another strike to her jaw blurred her vision. Reaper stepped closer, his voice low, almost intimate. Harker wanted the guards distracted. Rico wanted blood spilt. "But me? I wanted you. You think you're different, that you're untouchable. But tonight, even the wolf gets caged." They dragged her through the dim corridor, every step a battle against the pain surging through her body. Selena clenched her teeth, refusing to cry out. She would not give them the satisfaction. Block C loomed ahead, its heavy doors swung wide. Inside, dozens of inmates waited, their cheers echoing off the concrete walls as Selena was thrown to the ground like a prize. The sound was deafening, mocking laughter, cruel taunts, the stomp of boots on steel, and then came the voice that silenced them all. Enough. Rico Sanchez stepped forward, his presence commanding, his sharp eyes studying Selena like a man sizing up both threat and opportunity. He raised a hand and the crowd's noise faded into uneasy quiet. "She's more than just leverage," Rico said, circling her slowly. "She's a fighter. I've seen it. Killing her would be wasteful. Keeping her alive, now that's power. the inmates murmured among themselves, divided between cruelty and strategy. Selena, still on her knees, lifted her head. Bruised, bound, and outnumbered, she met Rico's gaze with defiance burning in her eyes. She might be caged tonight, but deep inside, the wolf was stirring, and sooner or later the wolf would strike. Block C was alive with noise, mocking laughter, taunts, and the rattle of metal against concrete. Selena Vega sat bound against a cold pipe, her wrists raw from the ropes that cut into her skin. Her body ached from the blows she had taken, but her spirit, scarred, sharpened, and unyielding, was far from broken. Inmates circled her like vultures. One jeered, "The mighty Officer Vega, just another trophy now." Another leaned close, waving a shiv inches from her face. The crowd roared with cruel amusement, feeding on her vulnerability, but Selena's eyes didn't falter. She stared at them the way a wolf might study a pack of hyenas, calm, patient, calculating. She remembered the underground rings of her past, the blood, the grit, the times she had been thrown against men twice her size and told to survive. Those memories didn't haunt her, they armed her. Martinez, a bulky inmate eager to prove himself, stepped forward. "Let's end this charade," he barked, cracking his knuckles. "She's nothing but a guard without her badge," the crowd cheered. Rico Sanchez, however, leaned back against the wall, arms crossed, watching closely. Martinez lunged, swinging hard. Selena moved with precision, ducking low and slamming her shoulder into his knee. He stumbled, cursing. Bound as she was, she still found the angle to rise and drive her forehead into his nose. The crack echoed through Block C. Martinez screamed, blood streaming down his face as he fell backwards. The noise shifted. The laughter faltered. For the first time, the inmates looked at Selena not as prey, but as something else, something dangerous. Even bound, she was dangerous. Rico's eyes narrowed, a faint smile curling at his lips. "Interesting," he muttered. Another inmate tried to rush her, but Selena used the momentum, pivoting on her knees to slam her elbow into his gut, sending him staggering. She moved with the fluidity of a fighter who had spent her life turning pain into power. The crowd began to chant, their mockery replaced by awe. "La Loba! La Loba!" The wolf. Selena lifted her head, chest heaving, her hair clinging to the sweat and blood on her face. The name echoed through the block, and for the first time since being dragged in, she felt control shifting. Not completely, but enough. Fear was no longer her enemy. Fear belonged to them. Rico finally raised his hand, silencing the chants. He stepped closer, crouching so his eyes met hers. "You see what you've done, Officer Vega? You've earned something in here that most never do, respect. But respect is a weapon. Use it wisely or it will be used against you." Selena's lips curled into the faintest of smirks. "Respect isn't given, Sanchez. It's taken." The block erupted again, the chant louder this time. "La Loba! La Loba!" Bound, bruised, and outnumbered, Selena Vega had become something far greater than a guard. She had become a symbol of survival, a predator among predators. The wolf had awakened. The chants of La Loba still echoed in Selena's ears long after the inmates dispersed. She sat in the dim light of Block C, her wrists still bound, but her spirit sharpened like a blade. Survival wasn't enough anymore. She had become part of the prison's legend, and legends carried weight. Rico Sanchez lingered after the crowd left, studying her the way a predator sizes up another. He crouched in front of her, his eyes gleaming with curiosity. "You've got fight, Vega. More than fight, you've got fire. But fire burns fast if it isn't controlled." Selena met his gaze, unflinching. "I don't need your approval, Sanchez," he smirked, unbothered. "No, but you need allies. Block C isn't just about strength. It's about survival through numbers. And right now you've got attention. That makes you valuable. And dangerous." Before she could respond, a voice hissed from the shadows behind the bars. An older inmate, slim and graying, leaned forward. His name was Torres, once a locksmith, now a lifer with nothing to lose. "Sanchez speaks truth," Torres rasped. "They'll either follow you or they'll break you before you grow roots. Choose wisely." Selena tilted her head, sensing an undercurrent. "And what's your angle, Torres?" The man chuckled, a dry, rattling sound. "Angles are for men with time. I've got none, but I do know things. Things about tunnels. Things about Warden Harker." Her breath stilled for a moment. The word tunnels tugged at the memory of her suspicions, the riot being more than chaos, the silenced radios, the way doors had jammed too perfectly. "Talk," she demanded. Torres's eyes darted nervously. "Not here. Too many ears. But know this, Harker isn't locking this place down. He's unlocking it. The riot's smoke, Vega. Behind it lies something bigger than any inmate's plan." Rico leaned closer, his smile fading. "You're saying the warden's involved?" Torres nodded grimly. "And the tunnel? It's real, dug beneath our feet. Not for freedom, for profit." Selena's pulse quickened. She glanced at Rico, reading the flicker in his eyes. This wasn't just about control anymore. This was about corruption at the core. Moments later, another group of inmates swaggered in, Martinez among them, his nose still bandaged from Selena's earlier strike. His glare burned with humiliation. "Respect, huh? Let's see how long it lasts." But before he could lunge, Rico stepped forward, his voice low and commanding. "Stand down, Martinez. La Loba isn't yours to touch. She's under my watch now." The block went silent. Alliances had shifted with one sentence. Martinez spat on the ground and backed away, but his eyes promised revenge. Selena's smirk returned, faint but sharp. For the first time, she wasn't just surviving, she was playing the game. And now, with whispers of tunnels, corruption, and a fragile alliance with Sanchez, she was closer to the truth. But she also knew one thing for certain. In Stonewall Prison, truth was the deadliest weapon of all. The night inside Stonewall Correctional Facility was never truly quiet. Even after the riot had subsided into a tense lull, echoes of distant shouts and clanging metal drifted through the halls like restless ghosts. Officer Selena Vega, La Loba, sat against the cold stone, her wrists still sore from the bindings. But her mind was sharper than ever. Torres's words haunted her. The tunnel is real, and Harker is no jailer. He's the locksmith. When the guards' patrols shifted and the block dimmed into near darkness, Rico Sanchez leaned against the bars, his voice a whisper. "If Torres is telling the truth, we need proof. You and we're going to see what lies beneath." Selena narrowed her eyes. Trusting Rico was a risk, but so was doing nothing. If the warden truly orchestrated this chaos, the stakes were higher than she imagined. "Fine," she muttered. "But you step out of line, Sanchez, and I'll end you before Harker gets the chance." He chuckled, low and amused. "La Loba bites hard. I like that." Later that night, Torres slipped a thin piece of metal into Selena's palm, a crude but effective lockpick smuggled from his past life. With practiced skill, Selena freed herself, the cuffs falling silently to the ground. Rico watched her with an impressed nod. They moved like shadows through the half-ruined block, dodging guards who were still stretched thin from the riot. The air grew heavier as they descended deeper into the prison's unused corridors, guided by Torres's hushed directions from memory. Finally, they reached an old storage room tucked beneath Block D. The walls were cracked, the floor coated in dust. Selena scanned the room until her boot struck something hollow. She crouched, brushing away debris until a wooden hatch revealed itself, worn smooth by countless hidden hands. Rico exhaled slowly. The old man wasn't lying. Selena gritted her teeth and forced the hatch open. A cold draft wafted upward, carrying the scent of damp earth and rusted iron. She lowered herself carefully, landing in a narrow passage lined with timber supports. The tunnel stretched endlessly into darkness, its silence heavy with secrets. As they crept forward, faint lanterns flickered in the distance. Voices echoed, low, conspiratorial. Selena pressed herself against the wall, motioning for Rico to stay quiet. 2 inmates appeared, dragging crates stamped with unmarked seals. Selena's eyes widened. These weren't escape supplies, they were weapons. Assault rifles, ammunition, explosives, all smuggled in under the warden's nose, or worse, with his blessing. Rico swore under his breath. "This isn't just a breakout. This is a war waiting to happen. Selena's pulse hammered in her chest. Now she understood. The riot wasn't meant to free prisoners. It was meant to arm them. Harker wasn't guarding Stonewall. He was turning it into an armory for the highest bidder. But the realization sank in. One of the inmates lifted a lantern, its glow falling across the tunnel walls. Selena and Rico froze in the shadows, breaths shallow. Then came the words that made her blood run cold. By dawn, Harker expects us to move everything out. No mistakes. If La Loba gets in the way, she dies. The tunnel walls pressed in with damp silence as Selena Vega and Rico Sanchez crouched low, watching the smuggled crates of weapons being moved by Harker's loyal crew. Selena's gut twisted with rage. The riot wasn't just about chaos or escape. It was cover for an arms deal. If those rifles reached the surface, the city would be at war before sunrise. She leaned toward Rico, her voice low and urgent. "We have to stop this, no matter what." Before Rico could answer, a slow, mocking clap echoed from behind them. Both spun sharply. Marcus Reaper Cole emerged from the shadows, his scarred face illuminated by the flickering lantern light. His smirk was pure malice. "The wolf and the king," he sneered. "Crawling in the dark together. Did you really think you were the only ones with secrets down here?" Selena's fists tightened. "You knew about the weapons?" Reaper's grin widened. "I didn't just know, I'm part of it." "Harker trusts me more than any of you fools. While you've been wasting time, I've been building something bigger." His voice dropped to a hiss. "And you, Vega, you should have stayed in your cage." He lunged without warning, a shiv flashing in his hand. Selena twisted aside, but the blade grazed her arm, hot pain searing through her skin. She countered with a sharp elbow to his jaw, knocking him back, but Reaper only laughed. Still fighting like a dog, Rico tackled him, both men crashing against the tunnel wall. Their fists cracked against flesh, grunts echoing through the passage. Reaper spat blood and snarled, "You think she's your ally, Sanchez? She's a guard! She'll betray you the moment she can." The words dug deep, and for a split second Rico hesitated. Reaper used that hesitation to slam Rico to the ground, his shiv raised high. Selena acted fast, kicking the weapon from his grip and slamming him against a stack of crates. She pressed a jagged rock to his throat, her voice cold. "What's the plan, Cole?" Reaper smirked through split lips. "By dawn, these weapons are gone. The riot is smoke, nothing more. Harker gets rich, his chosen men walk free, and the city burns. You're already too late." Before Selena could respond, a whistle pierced the air. Heavy footsteps thundered down the tunnel as a dozen inmates armed with pipes and bats closed in. They surrounded Selena and Rico, their faces twisted with violence. Selena and Rico stood back to back. "You ready, Loba?" Rico muttered. Her eyes burned with resolve. "Always!" The tunnel exploded into chaos. Selena fought with feral speed, ducking and striking, turning every blow into survival. She tore a baton from an attacker's hands, swinging with precision. Beside her, Rico fought like a storm, brutal and unrelenting. But the numbers kept pressing, driving them toward exhaustion. Then the ground shook. A distant explosion rumbled above, dust raining from the ceiling. SWAT had breached the prison. The sound sent panic through the inmates. "Move the crates!" someone shouted. Reaper staggered to his feet, bloodied but laughing. "You hear that, Vega? That's the sound of your failure." Selena's vision blurred with fury. She lunged, striking Reaper with everything she had, slamming him into the dirt until his grin finally faded into unconsciousness. Breathing hard, battered but unbroken, she turned to Rico. "We're not done. Those weapons don't leave this tunnel." Above them, gunfire and sirens echoed. Time was almost gone. And Selena knew the next step would be the most dangerous of all, facing Harker and his monster, Crusher. The tunnels trembled with the echo of gunfire above as Selena Vega pushed forward, her body aching but her resolve sharper than steel. Beside her, Rico Sanchez limped but kept pace, the two of them moving deeper toward the heart of the smuggling route. The crates of weapons loomed ahead, stacked like a dark promise of destruction. And standing in front of them was the man she had been waiting for, Warden Harker, flanked by his enforcer, Crusher. Harker's suit was immaculate despite the chaos, his calm demeanor chilling. He adjusted his tie as though he were about to conduct a meeting, not oversee treason. "Officer Vega," he said smoothly. "Or should I call you La Loba? You've caused quite the disruption tonight." Selena glared at him, her fists clenched. "You betrayed everything this uniform stands for. You used these men, this prison, to build an empire of blood." Harker's smile never faltered. "Empires are built on vision, not sentiment. These weapons will reshape power far beyond these walls. You could have been part of it, Vega. Instead, you chose the wrong side." Crusher stepped forward, massive and silent, his shadow swallowing the light. The tunnel seemed smaller with him in it, his muscles rippling with barely contained violence. Rico muttered under his breath, "I'll take the giant." "You take the snake!" Crusher roared and charged, colliding with Rico like a battering ram. Selena barely had time to dodge as Harker drew a hidden pistol from his coat. The shot cracked through the tunnel, grazing the wall by her head. She dove forward, knocking the weapon from his hand. It skittered across the dirt, lost in the chaos. The fight exploded. Rico and Crusher battled with raw force, fists smashing into flesh, the ground shaking with every impact. Selena traded blows with Harker, his surprising agility fueled by desperation. He fought like a man who refused to lose everything he had built. Selena's ribs screamed with pain as Harker landed a hard strike, but she gritted her teeth and pushed back. Every memory of struggle, the streets, the fight rings, the riot, fueled her fists. She was no longer prey. She was the predator. With a final surge of strength, she drove Harker against the crates, pinning him with her forearm. "This ends tonight," she growled. He spat defiance, but before he could strike again, she slammed him to the ground, the crack of impact silencing him. At the same moment, Rico let out a victorious roar. Crusher lay unconscious at his feet, the giant finally brought down. The sound of boots and shouts filled the tunnel as SWAT stormed in, weapons raised. They froze at the sight of Selena standing over Harker, battered but unbroken. Slowly she raised her hands, her eyes never leaving the corrupt warden sprawled in the dirt. The officers cuffed Harker and his men, hauling them out of the tunnel. The crates of weapons were secured and the riot above was finally subdued. Stonewall would survive this night, but it would never be the same. Selena emerged into the pale light of dawn, her uniform torn, her body bruised, but her spirit unshaken. The inmates watched from their cells, silent but wide-eyed. No one saw her as prey anymore. She was La Loba, the wolf who had fought the darkness and won. For the first time, Selena allowed herself a deep breath. She had faced betrayal, corruption, and death itself, and walked away stronger. The world beyond Stonewall awaited, but inside these walls, her legend had already been written. Selena Vega no longer feared the shadows of Stonewall. She had become the shadow, fierce, unyielding, and unforgettable. The wolf would always rise,